It started as a dare. 6 high school seniors, Claire, Jordan, Max, Sophia, Ethan, and Layla, gathered at midnight in the oldest building in their town. A crumbling 12-story hospital set for demolition. Rumors swirled that it once served as a psychiatric facility where patients mysteriously disappeared, and that it was haunted. But that wasn't why they came. They were there for the elevator game. Claire had found the rules on a dark web forum, a ritual that, if done correctly, could transport you to another dimension. The process was simple but eerie. Ride the elevator in a specific sequence of floors. If done perfectly, a woman would enter on the 5th floor but must be ignored. If you looked at her or spoke to her, you'd be trapped. They laughed it off as nonsense. Still, Layla recorded everything for their horror vlog. They brought candles, snacks, and phones. Everything teens bring when they think nothing will go wrong. But something did. The building had no power. Yet when they reached the elevator, the panel glowed. That should have been their first sign. They hesitated, but Jordan insisted. "Come on, it's just a game." They entered. Max, Claire, Sophia, Jordan, and Layla. Ethan stayed behind to document from the hallway. The ritual began. 2nd, 6th, 2nd, 10th. Each floor groaned louder than the last. The air grew colder. The lights dimmer. When they reached the 5th floor, the elevator shuddered and stopped. The doors opened. Nobody spoke. A woman stood there. Her hair was soaked, clinging to her pale face. Her gown was hospital blue, ripped and soaked in something dark. Her head tilted as if her neck was broken, slowly turning toward them. Claire squeezed her eyes shut. Layla looked. The woman entered and stood facing the corner, silent. Layla whispered, "Do you see her breathing?" Sophia shook her head, eyes wide. Max pressed the button for the next floor, but the panel no longer worked. The woman began humming, a soft, tuneless melody that got louder with each second. Suddenly, the elevator shot upward like it had lost control. Lights flashing, alarms wailing. They screamed. Then it stopped. The doors opened, and the hallway outside wasn't theirs. It was black and gray. The floor was stone. No lights, no noise, no exit signs. Max stepped out, looking confused. "This isn't right." Claire pulled him back. "Get in. We're not supposed to leave." But Layla had already stepped out. Then Jordan. Then Sophia. The woman in blue smiled, and the doors closed. The elevator doors slammed shut with a metallic clang, trapping Claire and Max inside. The hum of the elevator was gone. Darkness settled like thick fog, and the overhead light flickered violently until it exploded, plunging them into near blackness. Claire pounded on the buttons. Come on, take us back." Max stood paralyzed, staring at the panel. Every button now read, hollow. No numbers. No floors. Then came the whispering. Low voices swirled around them, though the air was still. They weren't words exactly, more like the feeling of words. Something was watching. Claire screamed as something brushed her leg, cold, brittle like dried fingers. She turned. No one. Then the elevator began moving again, but it didn't rise or fall. It felt like it was drifting, sideways, through space. Suddenly, ding. The doors opened. Max and Claire stepped out into a hallway filled with old hospital stretchers and rusted tools. Everything was decaying, soaked in mildew and something red. The walls pulsed slightly, like they were breathing. And at the end of the hallway, Layla stood. But her back was turned. "Layla!" Claire called out. Layla turned. It wasn't her. Not exactly. Her eyes were pitch black, her skin sallow. Her mouth hung open too wide, and something behind her teeth seemed to twitch. She raised a hand, long, too long, and pointed. Behind Claire. She turned just in time to see the elevator. Doors close, sealing them in this place. Max stepped in front of her. "We need to find the others. Now." They ran. Deeper into the hollow floor. Meanwhile, Sophia and Jordan wandered through what looked like the same hospital, but twisted. Every hallway was identical. Doors led to more doors. The ceiling seemed to stretch forever, and sometimes, when they turned around, the path behind them was gone. Time didn't pass normally here. "Do you hear that?" Sophia whispered. It was a lullaby, being sung softly, the same one the woman had hummed in the elevator. They turned the corner and saw Ethan. He was sitting in a wheelchair, staring blankly, but when they called his name, he didn't move. Then he grinned. "Didn't think you'd make it," he said. Sophia stepped forward, trembling. "Ethan, you didn't come in the elevator?" "No," he said, rising slowly, his joints cracking. "But she let me in anyway." He opened his mouth to laugh, and the sound that came out was not human. Back in the other corridor, Claire and Max ran into a locked door. Behind them, footsteps clicked, slow, deliberate. Max tried the handle. It wouldn't budge. "Come on!" Claire screamed, slamming her fists on the door. The footsteps got louder. Then they stopped. Claire turned. It was the woman in blue, except now her face was visible. Her eyes were hollow. Her mouth was sewn shut. And yet, she smiled. The walls began to bleed. Claire screamed as the woman in blue reached out, her stitched mouth trembling like it wanted to tear open. Max threw his weight into the locked door again, and it finally burst open. They fell into a stairwell, except it wasn't just stairs. The walls were lined with mirrors, but the reflections weren't theirs. Claire's mirror self didn't mimic her movements. It tilted its head, watching. Max's reflection slowly smiled, though Max wasn't smiling at all. "We have to go," Claire whispered, gripping his arm. As they climbed the staircase, the mirrors started to crack one by one. With each step, their reflections began to change. Rotting faces, gouged eyes, twitching fingers. One of the mirror Claires suddenly slammed her palms against the glass, mouthing, "Don't leave me here." Max looked down. His shadow stretched the wrong way, climbing the stairs ahead of him. Something was waiting at the top. Meanwhile, Sophia and Jordan followed the Ethan thing into a room that shouldn't have existed. The space was circular, with elevators lining the walls, dozens of them. Each door bore a different symbol. Some were numbers, others were scratched symbols. Some even had eyes carved into them. Ethan stopped in the center of the room. "She doesn't like liars," he said, voice distorted. "She only takes those who play the game right." Jordan stepped back. "This isn't Ethan." Ethan turned, his head twitching unnaturally, neck bones snapping. He failed the game, so she kept his body. Suddenly, the lights cut out. And, when they flickered back on, Ethan was gone. But Sophia's phone lit up in her pocket, a message from Claire. "Don't trust Max." She froze. "What? What does that mean?" Jordan shook his head, confused. "They were together. How could she text you?" Then Sophia realized Claire's phone had shattered in the elevator. Who sent the message? Back in the stairwell, Claire and Max reached the top floor. It was an empty apartment floor, except every door was labeled with one of their names. "Why is my name on this?" Claire asked, standing before a door that read, "Claire, room 4C. Max pointed. "That one says mine." But Claire saw something strange. Max's name wasn't spelled right. It said, Max. She slowly stepped away from him. "You're not Max." He smiled, and his skin cracked like old porcelain. His voice deepened. "He broke the rules. You all did. I'm here to collect the debt." Claire turned and ran. The hallway twisted around her. Doors moved. Walls stretched. The floor beneath her turned into a black void, and ghostly arms tried to reach up and grab her. She stumbled into one final room. The real Max was inside, hooked to the ceiling by wires, unconscious. Claire screamed. His eyes fluttered open, and then something spoke from the walls. "Choose one to leave, the rest stay forever." Claire stared in horror at Max's limp body suspended by wires, his eyelids fluttering as if trapped between sleep and death. The room pulsed with a low-frequency hum that made her teeth ache. The voice came again, whispering from every wall. One can go. The rest stay with us. Us? Claire whispered, her breath visible now in the freezing air. Who are you? No answer, just silence, until Max's eyes flew wide open. Claire, he croaked. It's not just a game, it's a doorway. We opened it, we let them in. Before she could respond, a dozen elevator doors on the far wall opened simultaneously. From each stepped out copies, distorted versions of Sophia, Jordan, even herself. Some were weeping blood, others twitching with broken limbs. One, Claire looked at her and hissed, "You were never meant to leave." Meanwhile, Sophia and Jordan navigated the endless mirrored floor, the messages on their phones multiplying rapidly. Each new message showed, "Stop looking. She sees you. Too late now." Jordan grabbed Sophia's hand and led her through a warped hallway, where the walls wept dark fluid. "We have to find Claire. We finish this together." They reached the top floor, just in time to see Claire standing beside the real Max, and the creature wearing Max's skin watching from the shadows. Sophia stepped forward, but her reflection stayed still. "Claire, how do we know that's the real Max?" Sophia asked. Claire hesitated. Suddenly, the real Max whispered, "You called me a bastard for dropping your camera during the hike to Black Ridge Canyon." Claire blinked. That had happened. The other Max began to unravel, skin turning to ash, mouth opening wider and wider until it split across his face. From within spilled hundreds of whispering voices, rising in a deafening chorus. The building began to shake. Lights stuttered violently. Doors flung open to reveal black corridors filled with writhing shadows. The voice returned, angry now. "No, one leaves without a price." A massive antique elevator with no buttons arrived in the center of the hallway. Its doors opened to reveal a pitch-black shaft and one single rope hanging inside. Claire turned to the others. "We can't all escape." Sophia held her hand. "Yes, we can." Max, barely standing, gritted his teeth. "No, it's me. I was the one who begged to play the game. I brought us here. I'll stay." "No," Claire protested. But Jordan looked back. Dozens of them were coming. Shadow figures, reflections with gouged-out eyes, the stitched woman in blue. There was no time. Max turned, ran into the swarm, and screamed as they dragged him into the void. Claire, Sophia, and Jordan jumped into the elevator. When the doors opened again, they were outside. Morning sun, real air. The building was gone. Not a trace of it stood behind them, just an empty lot. No one believed their story, but they knew what happened. Claire still avoids mirrors. Sophia never uses elevators. And Jordan? He still gets texts from Max's number. Did I make it out? Nathan Reed was 29, recently unemployed, and behind on rent when he stumbled upon a clinical sleep study ad offering $5,000 for 2 weeks of participation. The catch? No sleeping allowed. Participants would be monitored in a controlled lab setting, equipped with cameras, nutrition, and daily mental tests. The ad promised, "You will be safe. You will be observed. You will be changed." Desperate, Nathan signed up. The facility was buried deep inside an unmarked wing of a private hospital. Outside Denver, white halls, buzzing lights, silent staff. 5 other participants were already checked in, each confined to private glass rooms furnished only with a bed, unused, a camera, a metal desk, and a 2-way intercom. The first few days were strange but manageable. The lights never dimmed. The meals were bland. Every few hours, a disembodied voice crackled through the speaker to ask questions. What color was your last dream? Do you still remember your mother's voice? Do you feel watched? Nathan thought it was part of the psychological assessment. By day 5, the hallucinations began. One man, Kevin, claimed his room was shrinking. A woman named Lila started whispering to the corners of her cell, giggling, telling them to stop mimicking her breath. No one had slept. The body twitched. The mind rebelled. On day 7, Nathan awoke from a microsecond blink, something forbidden, and saw a shadow in the corner of his room. Still, tall, unmoving. At first, he thought it was one of the staff, but no one came in. And when he blinked again, the shadow was gone. But the air felt colder. And from the glass window, he could see the panic in the eyes of the others. Nathan tried to convince himself the shadow was just a trick of his sleep-deprived brain, but the sense of presence never left. Every corner of the lab room felt wrong now, especially after sunset. Though the lights never dimmed, his body knew night had come. The temperature dropped slightly, the silence grew heavier, and the reflection on the glass walls began to lag. It started on the night of day 8. Nathan raised his hand to his face, and in the mirrored glass his reflection followed a second too late. It was subtle. He thought he imagined it, but the next night it smiled when he didn't. He stared into the glass, heart pounding, and slowly mouthed, "What are you?" The reflection mouthed back, "I'm already here." Nathan screamed. No response came. The intercom stayed silent. The other participants were breaking. Lila's eyes were bleeding from scratching at her eyelids. She begged the shadows to let her rest. Kevin curled up on the floor, whispering numbers backwards and clawing at his own shadow. Nathan pressed his palms against the glass and pleaded with the camera. "Something's in here. It's not just the sleep. Something's with us." That night, the shadow returned. Only this time, it moved. It stood just outside the range of the ceiling light, too dark to define. But Nathan could make out its jagged breathing. It smelled like old wood and mildew, and it whispered. Not in words, in memories, his dead dog's bark, his grandmother's last breath, a lullaby his mother used to hum, and then his own voice, screaming. Nathan curled into a corner and wept until the lights flickered violently and the shadow vanished, only to reappear behind the glass in Kevin's room the next night. Kevin's camera went black at 3:12 a.m. They found only blood smears on the walls. The room was sealed shut. No one entered. No one left. And yet Kevin was gone. Nathan didn't sleep. Not because of the experiment, but because now, something wouldn't let him. His room was cold. Too cold. The lights hummed above, flickering more frequently, but only in his section. The corners of the room were darker now, like the light refused to touch them. And the glass, the reflection didn't match him anymore. His copy paced when he was still, smiled when he cried. It watched him like he was the one trapped in the mirror. When he tried telling the researchers again, begging them to let him out, only static, answered through the intercom. Then, on day 11th, Lila was dragged away. Literally, the cameras recorded it. She stood at the center of her room, sobbing, and then was suddenly yanked backward, her body flailing as she was pulled into the dark, her fingernails tearing against the floor. Her scream didn't echo. It sank, like sound swallowed by water. They played the footage for Nathan. He noticed something. Just one frame, barely visible. A hand, pale and skeletal, gripping her ankle. Not human. Not possible. Nathan's room was next. That night the walls started, bleeding. Thin streaks of dark liquid oozed down the corners. The reflection grinned wider than a human face could. It mouthed something he couldn't understand. A word not meant for people. And then he saw himself sleeping. In the reflection. Peaceful, still. But Nathan was wide awake, heart pounding, trembling. He stared at the glass. The reflection slowly turned its head toward him, blinked, finally, and whispered, "Switch." And Nathan's lights went out. Nathan woke up, or thought he did. The room looked the same, white walls, metal bed, humming lights. But something was off. The air was heavier, thick with the scent of copper and mold. The ceiling fan had stopped spinning. The intercom was silent. And the mirror. The mirror no longer reflected him. Instead, it showed a still version of his room, pristine, untouched, empty. Nathan stood up slowly, trembling as he called out, "Hello?" No answer. He stepped closer to the mirror, eyes searching for his reflection. All he saw was the empty bed and the sterile room. Then, something moved behind him. In the mirror only. A shadow. It stepped into view. Tall. Thin. Wearing his face, but the eyes were dead black. It smiled with lips that split too far, stretching across a face too familiar. "Nathan!" It rasped. He spun around. Nothing. He turned back. His doppelganger was now inside the room. Or at least, the mirrored one. "Why are you afraid?" it said. "You asked to stay awake." Nathan stumbled back, slamming against the wall. The mirror version mimicked nothing. It stared directly into him, studying, hungry. Then he heard a voice over the intercom, weak and distant. "Nathan, the experiment has been terminated. If you can hear this, do not fall asleep." But he was so tired. So impossibly tired. His body sagged, eyes fluttered. "No," the creature said, its voice vibrating with static. "That's when I come through." The mirror shattered from the inside. The glass didn't fall, it pulled outward, like a hole tearing in space. Hands reached through, familiar hands. Dozens of versions of himself crawled out, all dead-eyed, all whispering, "Sleep, sleep, sleep." Nathan screamed. He fought, kicked, scrambled to the door. It opened. Not to the lab, not to anywhere he recognized. He stood in a hallway of doors, endless, cold steel doors. Some were open. Some were shaking violently. From behind one, he heard Lila crying. Another echoed with something crawling. A speaker crackled from the ceiling. "Welcome to Phase 2. Nathan turned, his body no longer casting a shadow. And in the reflective surface of a broken shard behind him, he wasn't there. He had become the figure. Now he watches others who volunteer. Waiting, whispering, promising them they'll be safe, as long as they stay awake. It had only been 3 days since Claire moved into apartment 3B of the old Ashpine Heights building. The rent was suspiciously low for a unit in the city, but Claire, fresh out of a breakup and eager to start over, didn't ask too many questions. The place had charm, creaky wooden floors, vintage moldings, and a full-length antique mirror mounted on the bedroom wall. From the first night, she felt watched. It wasn't paranoia exactly, but something about that mirror made her uneasy. She would glance at it casually while changing or brushing her hair and feel a strange tightness in her chest, like someone else was in the room. On the third night, she noticed something strange. Claire had finished brushing her teeth and was about to turn off the bathroom light when she caught her reflection lagging, just by a fraction of a second. She stopped cold, blinked. The reflection didn't. It just stared at her with a half-smile she wasn't making. Claire shook her head and laughed it off. "You need sleep," she whispered, flipping the light off. But the next morning, the mirror was the first thing she checked. Her reflection stared back, normal, matching her every move. That afternoon, Claire asked her neighbor Mrs. Donnelly, an elderly woman across the hall, if anything strange ever happened in her unit. The woman stared at her a long time, then said, "3B? That place eats people." Claire laughed nervously, expecting a chuckle. Mrs. Donnelly just shut her door. That night, Claire caught her reflection smiling again. This time, she wasn't even smiling. Claire barely slept. The next morning, she avoided the mirror as much as possible, rushing past it with eyes downcast. But that reflection, that smirking imitation of her, clung to the back of her mind like a shadow she couldn't outrun. At noon, she draped a blanket over the antique mirror. She told herself it was silly, but she couldn't bear to look at it anymore. The room immediately felt lighter, safer. That illusion didn't last. While unpacking an old box, she heard a faint tap-tap-tap from the bedroom. She paused, listening. The noise continued, like fingernails tapping against glass. Claire's blood ran cold. She crept into the room. The blanket had fallen to the floor. The mirror stood uncovered, gleaming faintly. But what made her breath catch was what she saw. Her reflection was there, except it wasn't wearing the same clothes. She was in a white nightgown Claire didn't own. Her hair hung damp, as if she had just come from the rain. And her skin, it was too pale, almost bluish. Claire stumbled back, heart thudding. The reflection tilted its head, slowly, deliberately. Then it raised its hand and tapped the inside of the glass. Claire ran out of the room and didn't return for hours. That night, as she lay on the couch in the living room, she dreamed of water dripping. She was standing in front of the mirror again, but her reflection was smiling. Not kindly. It was the kind of smile a predator wears before it pounces. In the dream, the reflection whispered, "Let me in." She woke up drenched in sweat, the faint scent of damp wood and rot lingering in the air. The next morning, Claire decided to have the mirror removed. She called building management, but no one picked up. She left a message and grabbed her keys to go downstairs. Maybe find help. But when she opened the door, the hallway outside wasn't the one she knew. The carpet was old, moth-eaten. The walls were peeling and gray, and every light bulb flickered, humming like a swarm of flies. The air smelled metallic and stale, like something long dead. She stepped back into her apartment in horror. It was normal, just as she left it. She stepped outside again. The hallway was still wrong. And then she saw it. At the far end of the corridor, her reflection stood, barefoot, in that same white gown, staring at her. And she was no longer in the mirror. She was outside it now, and walking slowly, silently, toward Claire. Claire slammed the door shut, heart racing. She braced her weight against it, listening, but there were no footsteps, no knocks, just silence. Too much silence. She backed away slowly, eyes darting around the apartment. Every shadow seemed darker now, every creak of the wood underfoot sharper. She grabbed her phone. No service. No Wi-Fi. Even the clock on the wall had stopped at 3:07 a.m., the exact moment she had first seen her reflection smirk. The lights flickered once, then twice. Then the power died. Darkness swallowed the room whole. In the suffocating silence, something moved behind her. A whisper, not in her ears, but in her mind. "You're not supposed to be here." Claire spun around. The mirror was uncovered again, but now it was glowing, as if moonlight was trapped inside it. And standing in its center, surrounded by shimmering black glass, was the other Claire. Only now, it wasn't an imitation. It was perfectly her. Same clothes, same hair, same expression. Except, it was smiling. Wide. Too wide. Claire took a step back. So did the reflection, but it didn't mimic her. It did it a moment later, deliberately. Then it waved at her, and stepped forward. The surface of the mirror rippled like water, and the reflection moved through it. A foot, then a hand, touching the air of Claire's bedroom as though crossing from one world into another. Claire screamed and grabbed a heavy bookend, hurling it at the mirror. It shattered. Glass exploded across the room. But when she looked again, the mirror was untouched. Not a single crack. The reflection now stood just inside it, pressing her face to the glass. Her eyes were black voids, and her breath fogged the inside like she was alive in there. "Let me wear you." The lights flared back on. The apartment looked normal. Again. Claire ran to her neighbor's apartment, pounding on the door. No answer. She pounded again. The door creaked open by itself. The room beyond was empty, but filled with mirrors. Dozens of them. Some cracked, some fogged, some still reflecting people. People Claire had never seen, all of them screaming silently, fists banging against the inside. Then she saw herself, in every mirror. And in each one, the version of her inside was screaming, while she, standing outside, was smiling. She turned to run, but her own reflection in a tall hallway mirror wasn't moving. It smiled, lifted its hand, and waved goodbye. Then, everything went black. Claire woke up on the bare floor. Her head ached. Blood trickled from a cut on her temple. Her apartment was dim again, sunset light leaking through the curtains, casting orange streaks across the floor. She scrambled up, searching for her phone. It was gone. So were all the mirrors. Every last one gone. From the bathroom, the hallway, even the neighbor's door, which now stood shut and locked like nothing had happened. She tried calling the building manager. No response. She called a friend. Voicemail. She tried the front door, stuck. The air felt heavy, almost pressurized. The walls seemed closer. The windows no longer showed the city, but endless, swirling fog. Then, a sound. From her bedroom. A soft tapping, like nails against glass. She turned the corner slowly, heart racing. There was a new mirror. Tall, full length, standing where there had been a bookshelf before. And inside it was Claire. But this Claire looked tired, her hair disheveled, her eyes bloodshot. She wore the exact outfit Claire had on yesterday. She wasn't moving. She wasn't blinking. She just stared through Claire. Then, without moving her lips, her voice echoed in Claire's mind. "You're on the wrong side." Claire backed away, but her feet wouldn't obey. It felt like something behind her spine was being pulled, inch by inch, toward the mirror. The reflection slowly lifted its hand and pressed it against the glass. A perfect match. Claire was drawn in, her hand raised. She didn't lift it. It just moved. No control. She screamed, but no sound came out. She turned to run, and froze. Her reflection was no longer in the mirror. It was behind her, smiling, alive. It whispered. You blinked. Claire's vision ripped in half. One moment she was standing in the bedroom. The next, she was behind glass, inside the mirror, screaming, trapped. While the version of her, the thing that had watched, waited and mimicked, walked calmly into the hallway, brushing dust off her shoulders, smiling into the world. Now she walks the apartment, perfectly normal. To others, she's Claire. But at 3:07 a.m., if you pass her door and listen carefully, you might hear a scream. Not from the room. From the mirror. And if you ever see your reflection hesitate, run. Because the one inside wants out. And she never blinks.